Hey, good evening, everybody. It's Friday night, TGIF. I'm so happy the week is over, the work week. And now we're going to have on this program, Let's Talk. Welcome from Browniefox Publishing, Let's Talk. Tonight, we're going to have two accomplished authors. We're going to have Ronald F. Owens on first. He's written about 4 or 5 books. He's a very devout Christian, and he's got some very interesting ways of delivering his message. Also, we have Dr. Andrew Knight, who is also a Christian minister, pastor, and all kinds of other things. You see him on TV here and there every once in a while. These are two of my good Facebook friends, and I am pleased to present them tonight. And once again, this is sponsored by Browniefox Publishing, where we publish books. So we're bringing on new artists. Authors. And we're going to have other shows like this. And this is one of our series of having authors on. And that's very important to get to know other people and how they write books and how I can learn from them and everybody else can. So please like, comment, and share and subscribe to the Let's Talk Facebook and YouTube page. And let's get started. I'm going to bring on Mr. Ronald F. Owens. There we go. Ronald, there you are. Hey, can you say, I can't hear you right now. Can you talk? Oh, I cannot hear you. I can't hear you right now. It's not muted. Can you hear me? We can't hear him right now. Let's see if let me try something here. Still can't hear you. Is it it can't be the earplugs, right? Yeah, you can try that. Okay, he's going to go back out and come right back in. Let me go back to the page. Oops. So next week, or the next show we have on the 10th of November, we are going to feature, let me show you here. I'm using this little magic here. We're going to, in honor of Veterans Day, we are going to share, let's see. Ronald's trying to get back on. Hi, Ronald.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Okay, there. All right. When in doubt, go back out and come back in.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. You know, that's how this country works. The reset country. We had this jet I used to work on. They call it the reset jet. If you reset it, it worked fine. And that's the old-fashioned way, right? Of fixing something, turn it off and back on. And it worked. It worked great. Very, very nice. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this is Ronald F. Owens. He's an author of multiple books, and he has a very unique way of delivering the gospel and his ideas, transforming them from the Bible into real life, and it's fascinating to listen to. So Ronald is a follower of Jesus Christ. He earned his Associates of Arts degree at Sacramento City College. By the way, Ronald is from Sacramento. Both my guests are from way out of town, and I like to live there. As a matter of fact, I actually I was born north of Sacramento, Marysville. So also he had also studied the Holy Bible at Fuller Theological Seminary in Northern California, Sacramento campus. He earned his Bachelor's of Arts degree in Government and Journalism, California State, Cal State, right?
Yes.
Also a communications professional who has tenured more than 30 years of writing experience. That's very important to this craft, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And he has written portions of the Bible in the newspaper format called the Testament Spectacular. That's very unique. I wish I could have got to you before the other company did, because you have some really good stuff. So you also studied the Holy Bible in the state of Israel 3 times,
Three
in the
times. Yeah.
Heshite Kingdom of Jordan twice. I've been to Jordan. It's hot.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so your pilgrimages help you become what you are and understand things from right up there, up front. So welcome to the program. Let's talk, Ronald. I appreciate you being here. I think I've seen you on Facebook a lot. We did a little bit of here and there, and I'm very pleased. And as an accomplished writer, I see what you're doing, and I like to do the same thing. Maybe, I can learn a lot from you. One of the things I did learn reading your book, your audio book, which is unique. I've never done that, and now I'm considering that.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about your books and your writings and different things you do as an author. Yes.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me and also for reading my book. And the bio that you read was from my Ronald F. Owens jr.com website. There's about Ronald there, and that's the bio that's underneath that subhead. But essentially, I have two kinds of writing. As you indicated in reading my bio, I've rewritten about 10% of the Bible in newspaper format called the Testament Spectator. I know you did say spectacular, but
Yes,
it's called
sorry.
the Testament Spectator. And essentially, I am positing myself as a reporter, and I'm reporting things that happen in the Bible in a newspaper format. So I've rewritten about 10% of the Bible, which includes 7 edition. My flagship edition is my 48-page, 125-story newspaper that reports the lifetimes and teachings of Jesus Christ. So that's my main flagship edition. I have smaller editions on Moses and the Exodus, Joshua and the Jericho conquest, Gideon, the entire book of First Samuel, as well as Jonah, and then, as I indicated, the edition about Jesus Christ. And so, from those editions, particularly the edition about Jesus Christ, I came to this about the story where Jesus and Martha and Mary and the death of Lazarus. And there's some really gripping narrative in the book of John that talks about that story. And I didn't know how to report the interactions that Jesus had with Lazarus's surviving siblings. And so this probably was about 1997, 1998. And I asked my mom, "Oh, how do I report this particular narrative about the death of a brother and the two surviving sisters?" And they're saying, "Jesus, if you had only come sooner, Lazarus would have lived." And my mom says, "Pretend that you're one of the sisters of Lazarus." And so I put myself in her shoes or her sandals, and I told her story, pretending as if I was her. And from that, I think, well, that works. And then I began to develop that concept with talking about Pontius Pilate, who crucified Jesus, and the conversations that he had with Jesus. And I used also the eyewitness account on the Roman centurion. I crucified the Lord. I put myself in the shoes or sandals of the Roman centurion, and I described the horrors of the crucifixion. I did the same thing after Jesus' death and resurrection, where Mary Magdalene, "I have seen the Lord," and how the Gospels tell about what she experienced based upon the scripture, seeing the Lord. And then there's a companion piece about Peter. "I did not see the Lord." And so I used that as a vehicle to describe what Peter could have been thinking, and I basically write what he fictitiously was thinking when he was jogging on the way to the tomb, and I used it as a vehicle to recount about his experiences with Jesus. But those 3, 4, 5 chapters is the foundation of my book called Spectators of Jesus the Christ, where I take 19 men and 17 and 7 women, excuse me, 17 men and 9 women, and I'm telling their story as if I'm Mary Magdalene, as if I'm John the Baptist, as if I'm King Herod, and I beheaded John the Baptist. So these two kinds of writing, the First Testament Spectator Bible newspaper writing, where I am offering to people who come to my website, ronaldfowensjr.com, they could download those 7 Testament Spectator editions at no cost. That's my gift to anybody who comes to my website. They could download those PDFs at no cost, and they can use them in their private Bible study. They could use them from homeschooling their kids or for Sunday school. And then my second group of writings is I'm putting myself in the shoes or sandals of, like I said, the 17 men, 9 women, and spectators of Jesus the Christ. Or Noah, prepare the ark. I put myself in the shoes or sandals of Noah, and I'm building the ark. That's also an audiobook as well. And basically, I describe for the reader how it must have been for Noah to not only see what he saw, deal with what he dealt, but build the ark. And so someone asked me when I was writing that book, you must have did a lot of research writing Noah, preparer of the ark. I said, no, I just basically said, Lord, help me develop a process of building the ark. And that's what I did. I described how it could have been based upon how the Holy Spirit, based upon him blessing us with being creative about building the ark. And the book that you referenced also called Rich Man and Lazarus, Hell and Heaven Described in Their Own Words. That's a basic gospel of soteriology book, or gospel of salvation. And it's a narrative about how the rich man lived, what he did, the sins he committed, how he died. And then the second chapter is about Lazarus, what kind of man he was and how he lived. And then the third chapter, and how he died. And then the third chapter is about the rich man dying and going to hell, and about what it is to be in hell based upon the 35 or 40 scriptures that talks about hell in the Bible. I'm using that as a foundation to talk about what it is to actually suffer eternally in hell. And conversely, the next chapter is about Lazarus when he dies, and what it is to be with Jesus, but how he dies and how he's transported by the angels to heaven, what he sees, what he experiences, the people that he interacted with that were pivotal in witnessing to him and bringing him along. And when I was recording that particular book, I thought I was going to have problems reading the chapter about hell. No. I have problems reading about heaven, because the enemy doesn't want us to focus on being with the Lord. That's why there's a plethora. There's a lot more verses about heaven in the Bible than there is about hell, because God wants us to focus on being with him eternally.
That's right. And the way I would like to explain the way that you talk about in the Lazarus and the rich man, you put it in a modern day atmosphere where the rich man has properties and he hangs out with the Hollywood stars and he's got everything, but he does indulge in sins that we know of today, and pretty extreme in some cases. But that actually happens, and that's what's happening in the world as we speak. And it relates perfectly. I can identify with what you're saying more than if I read the scriptures and I don't know anything about it, if I'm a person. But the way that you presented it, it was very well done. And it actually it sounds like a movie script to me.
Well, perhaps that could be, in the future, perhaps you're president. There is a very a moment in the chapter about what the rich man does, and that is based upon a true incident.
Hmm. I
And
understand.
so I felt so the person that it happened to released me to tell that particular story. But yeah,
Nice.
the purpose of all of my writings, my seven Testament Spectator writings, which I mean, seven Testament Spectator editions, which represents about 10% of the Bible, and then the telling these Bible stories based upon the perspective of those who experience it, is basically to provide an illumination, to point people toward the Bible. It's to get people interested in reading the Bible and to really drill down deep in the Bible characters and what they must have been thinking and what they must have been feeling, because people really haven't changed throughout the centuries. We drive cars. I mean, back then they had chariots. We have the challenges of living today as they did yesteryear. So, because people haven't changed,
I
it's
agree.
kind of easier to sort of like project what they could have been thinking, what they could have been feeling. Oh God, for example, one of the chapters in Spectators of Jesus the Christ, I put myself in the shoes and sandals of the Pharisee whose daughter was dying, and how he was a respectable religious man, and he could have gone to Jesus sooner, but he didn't. Why did he not go to Jesus sooner? Maybe there was some sort of peer pressure among his Pharisaical colleagues. Maybe he and his wife had some sort of words about, you know what, our daughter's sick. The rabbi's here in town. Why don't you go? No, I don't want to like upset my standing with my colleagues. So so those kind of dynamics I bring out. And again, this is fictitious, but it points people toward the Word of God.
It makes you think about it. And yeah, you're right. Because one of the things I talk about in my book is that we're just primitive people with technology. And you hit that right on the head because we haven't changed. We're still the same humans. We have the same DNA. We act the same. We just have new things. We have cars now.
Yeah, yeah,
And we're civilized, quote, civilized, right?
yeah.
Whatever that means. And we're all, that's why the Bible is relevant today because we're the same people.
Well, I like when you say that we're quote civilized.
Mhm.
I'm learning how the world really works. We haven't really changed at all. And this is why we need Jesus. This is why we need Jesus Christ in our lives. I don't understand how people can go through life without the Lord.
I understand. I totally agree with you. No help. It's like they have
Yeah.
no help.
So yeah, there's my other book also about Judas. There's a small book about Judas, which I take the three chapters out of Spectators of Jesus the Christ, and I produced a smaller book called Judas Betrayer of Jesus. And it's a very quick read or very quick listen. You can read it as a we call it book or ebook or audiobook. But the first chapter, Judas talks about why he betrayed Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Very
Um,
interesting. Very
yeah, the second
interesting.
chapter is how he betrayed Jesus.
Mhm.
And then the third chapter are the eternal consequences of Judas betraying Jesus. What I learned in writing that book, that he was the first of the disciples to actually confess, but he
Mm.
went to the wrong place. He went to the Sanhedrin, the same guys
Mm.
who wanted Jesus dead. What's the lesson learned, that when you sin, you go to Jesus, you go to God. And that's what Judas did not do. I believe Judas could have been forgiven if he just had waited and asked to be forgiven, but he didn't. Another lesson of Judas is that he was with Jesus for what, 2, 3 years, It's a long period of time. They walked together. They all slept, near each other. I mean,
Right.
they ate together. They laughed together. You probably later had little arguments together. They followed Jesus. Jesus sent them out. Judas healed people and cast out devils when Jesus sent all the disciples out. So the
Yeah, he
lesson,
was one of them.
yeah, so the lesson learned from Judas is that all of us in our way have betrayed Jesus in some form or fashion. And we constantly have to present ourselves before Jesus in a penitent, Lord, where have I missed it? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I writing these books? Why am I, is it because of my self-aggrandizement? You know, I mean, what
Right.
was Judas's motives for doing? He probably, oh my God, I cast out those devils. Oh Lord, look at me. Oh my God, I healed that person. And and then you look at Peter and his issues as well. He had a big blabbermouth. But yeah, some of these characters that I'm writing about, it just causes the reader or the listener, should people want to download the audiobook, to just kind of think about the characters, the people that were in Bible time and the lessons that we can learn from them.
I totally agree. And you're bringing it alive. You're bringing it relevant to our time. Even though we're the same people, we're still living in different time periods. And, people think they're smarter than the people in the past. And really, they were brilliant from the beginning of time. I think we're devolving a little bit at a time because
Yeah.
everything is peeled for us and cut for us, and packaged for us. We couldn't survive out in the wilderness for a week, most of us.
Well, interesting. We talk about the wilderness experience because, as you indicated in reading my bio, I've been to Israel 3 times. The first couple of times, I mean, the first time is great. Oh my God, it makes the Bible come alive. And second time,
Mhm.
the first time I went was in 1995. Second time was in 2000, and then third time was in 2008. But that third trip, oh my God, we would actually, it was what you call a hiking tour. So they would take us out in the middle of the Negev desert near the Egyptian border. And we all get off the bus. The bus would drive off, and we're just out there in the middle of the desert. And so I'm 6'2", and the shorter ladies that were near me, they were using my body as a shadow. But there was no trees, no nothing, man.
Wow, that's amazing.
125-degree heat.
Yeah, I know what it's like over there.
Yeah,
I know what
yeah.
it's like, Jordan, Africa, all those places. Yeah, it's not fun.
No, yeah. But when
It's
you go to
real.
Israel, I felt God's presence there,
Mhm. Yeah.
especially in the silence of the desert in Israel. I just felt God's presence. I would encourage anybody to go to Israel because it makes the Bible really come alive.
I always wanted to go there. That's going to be one of my goals. I've always wanted to do that. And I was like 30 miles from Israel when I was in Jordan, where we were at a base. So didn't quite get there, but someday.
Well, hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later.
Hey, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Uh, so what's next for you? You have any books you're working on? You have anything in
Yes,
the hopper?
actually, I do. I'm working on
Okay.
2 books, and I go through this process every time I start write a book. There's like, okay, I got this one done, and I got to start another one. And sometimes I have writer's block, and I have to go through this whole process, which I'm patient. And then I start at it, and then the ideas start to come, and I have to tell the Holy Spirit, slow down, I can't keep up,
Right.
But yeah, I am looking at 2 characters. One is Joseph,
Okay.
the son of
Interesting.
Jacob,
Right.
and the kind of man he was. And then I'm looking at Hezekiah.
Hmm.
King Hezekiah is my favorite king. And there is an interesting incident that occurs, and I don't specifically remember the books. I think in Second Kings and one of the Chronicles, where King Sennacherib from Assyria is
Hmm.
laying siege of Jerusalem. And the reason what piqued my interest with Hezekiah is when I went to Israel in 2008, I was privileged to go walk underground to Hezekiah's tunnel. And that was really a mind blowing. That
I
was probably
bet
one
it
of my
was.
favorite sites
Uh-huh.
underground. And it's about 1/3 mile trek from the Gihon, Gihon spring to the Siloam, Sil or Am pool. The Gihon spring is outside the wall at that time, and then the Gihon spring was inside. Excuse me, the Siloam pool was inside the wall, and so there was a collection of men at both ends, and they were digging underground because they went because Hezekiah saw that this threat was coming from Assyria, and he was preparing his people. He prepared himself insofar as setting his spiritual house in order, instituting some of the rituals that the previous kings were had abandoned, and so he got a spiritual house in order, got some of the rituals established, and then he prepared him, and then he pacified the king by paying them what you call it a tribute at the same time as preparing the siege by making sure they have plenty of water. So that particular book is going to be about Hezekiah the man, and I always trying to apply how can I learn from this situation, and at the height of this narrative in the Old Testament, Sennacherib's guys were talking smack against God, and they had written some stuff down, and they gave to Hezekiah's representatives, and the representatives gave it to Hezekiah, and Hezekiah took what the Assyrians wrote about all this smack talk, like who is your God? He can't defeat my king. And Hezekiah took what they wrote, laid it in the temple, and said, "Hey God, look what they're saying about you." You know?
Wow, that's amazing. That right there, it brings it to life when you go there. I could understand that because I went to Antioch of Assyria, the first church, and it changed everything. It's like, wow, they lived like they were really persecuted all the time. And
Yeah,
you don't think
yeah,
about that. The persecution
yeah,
we talk about is not the same as what they were actually killed, threatened.
yeah. I
So,
understand that the Assyrians were considered the Nazis of their time. They were really cruel, cruel people. But one angel of the Lord, as the scriptures chronicle, killed 185,000 Assyrians. God didn't even afford respect to the enemy by having a whole host of angels defeat 185,000 Assyrians. He just sent one angel.
that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. But I want to encourage people to go to my Ronald F. Owens jr.com website, where, as I indicated, they can download my 7 Testament Spectator Bible newspapers at no cost, and you can also purchase my book in soft cover or ebook or an audiobook. And my fourth audiobook of Spectators of Jesus the Christ, which is available in soft cover and ebook. Spectators of Jesus the Christ will be available in audiobook in the next few weeks.
Anything you want to add there before you go? I just wanted to say I appreciate you being on here, and I enjoyed your book. I want to tell everybody I recommend the audiobook for sure.
Well,
It'll bring things.
the audiobook of Story of Rich Man and Lazarus, which is also in soft book and ebook, that was born from the death of my late 106-year-old maternal grandmother.
Yes, I
So
remember reading that.
yeah, she was. Matter of fact, the 5th anniversary of her death is coming up next week. And one of the things that she repeatedly told us when she was alive is to keep your face in Jesus's face. And I want to encourage you and your wife and your family and your loved ones and your friends and everyone who is listening during the times that we're dealing with in this nation, in this world. Keep your face in Jesus's face.
That was beautiful. I totally agree. And thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate your company and your knowledge and your wisdom. And we thank you. I don't want to take too much of your time. And you can stick around with the next guest if you like, or you can leave and do whatever you have to do or whatever you have planned. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I appreciate the invitation and sharing what God has shared with me. I do have family waiting for me, so I'm going to have to bow out. So, but thank you for again allowing me to share with you this evening, and also
it's been my
listeners.
pleasure. It's been my pleasure, and thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. You take care now.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. So now our next guest is Dr. Andrew Knight. Dr. Andrew Knight, oops, here we go. There it is from Florida. You live in Florida.
Yeah.
And I see you everywhere. You're on the road, different places. And I see you you do the TV shows, you do a bunch of other things, and you're taking care of churches and programs. I want to read your bio. I don't know if I have enough breath to express the depth of Dr. Knight. So here's a little information. Dr. Knight has a bachelor's degree of the Bible at Pensacola Christian College, 1994. Carolyn and I have been there. We were there last year in October.
Okay.
Nice town. Master of Biblical Studies, Emmanuel Baptist Theological Seminary, 2004. Master of Religious Education, West Coast Baptist College, 2010. Doctor of Ministry, Luther Rice Seminary, 2014. Master of Biblical Apologetics, Baptist Bible Seminary, 2018, and a PhD from Piedmont International University. I am very proud of
you. Actually, I didn't do the PhD. I bowed out of that. Yeah. I've been accepted in 4 different PhD programs, but then never really had the piece to follow through with it. So I just haven't done it. I'm really looking for a THM or a PhD in church history is really what I want. So.
Yeah, you're a busy man. You're probably one of the busiest men that I know. The things that you do are amazing. You also, let's see, you were a Christian school teacher at Heritage Christian Academy, pastor of Constitution Baptist Church, do a lot of speaking, pastor of another church in 2011, and president and founder of Centurion Education Foundation, director of Bible Teacher and Bible Teacher Excellent Way Ministries. And you have numerous publications, and which is the reason why you're here. I want to talk about your books and your writing and other things that you do, your media experiences. And I learned a lot from you, talking to you and communicating with you. And you helped me out with different things. Like I understand you have your own agent that gets you into different programs, and you have everything set up. Your website is beautiful, just like Ronald. Ronald has a fabulous website as well. And
which one are you referring to? AndrewKnight.org? Which one are you? Yeah, that's pretty new. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very nice. Everything you're doing is very, very well professional. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was, can you describe what you're working on now, what your projects are?
Well, I'm planning to buy at least about 120 books on Old Testament biblical apologetics in December, and then start writing, Lord willing, in January on apologetics in the Old Testament. I'm also at the same time I'm tasked. I just finished my first 5-module development of 5 module course in apologetics that we are getting ready to launch on my website, AndrewKnight.org, and we're going to. My vision for that is we're going to be advertising it locally, and there's 2 of my books on apologetics go with the course. So my my plan is to go when people sign up in the local area for the course, and go over and deliver the books to their home and lead everybody to the Lord in their household that isn't saved, and see if a church might grow out of that. And but the same time we have these courses offered on my site, I'm working with another Bible Institute in Alabama called Emmaus Bible Training Center. And so with their permission, I'm developing courses for them as well as my own ministry. So simultaneously, my courses will be offered with them, while they're also offered with my own ministry, which is actually under the tag Centurion Education Foundation. So I was talking to them in Alabama earlier today. Actually, the guy I talked to, that I report to, he was interested in my study in Isaiah, and I've taught through 22 chapters of Isaiah, the apologetics of Isaiah, and he wants me to develop that into some courses. So I'm thinking more about how we can get that plugged in there. But then I think I'm going to have 5 other modules out of my Transformational Truth Volume 1 and 2 developed, and I have an editor that's helping me with the editing of these courses. So that's helping me a tremendous bit. So, and then my other book, Leadership the Lord's Way, I think I'll have 6. I think I'm going to have 6 module course out of that book as well. So we probably have 2 more courses to develop before I get into Isaiah. Meanwhile, I'm going to be starting to write a new manuscript on the apologetics of Old Testament, in the Old Testament, I should say. Mm-hmm. So I have a book list of about 100 I think it's 120 or 122 volumes, but those are only the book sources. I'll get journal sources and other online sources to go with them. My last book on apologetics was 80 sources. Transformational Truth Volume 2 was 80 sources. Volume 1, which I think you read, was 60 a mere 65 sources. But this is where real education comes into play. When you're scouring through all these books, and you're looking for something, you kind of start with your outline, and then you're basically writing one chapter at a time, and you think of each chapter as a term paper, if you will. Maybe 20 pages, or might be 40 pages. My most recent book, my first 2 chapters were 40 and 50 pages or thereabouts. They were massive. That probably isn't the best length for a writer. I just read another book by Dr. Al Mohler, and his it was 25 chapters, and every chapter was only about 6 or 8 pages. So there's probably some genius to short chapters, but yeah, well, yeah, there's something to be said for that. You certainly feel like you're making progress as you're going through pages, and every 6 or 8 pages is a new chapter. You think, wow, you hit another mountaintop every 8 pages. So, but I was dealing with some pretty kind of deep topics. I was dealing with philosophy really, and my recent book, Transformational Truth Volume 2, the first chapter deals with philosophy, and really I had to, boy, that was a head scratcher, because I had to go back, and we use it so generically, but really the word philosophy is really an anti-Christian thought process. So I wanted to define my terms. So by the time I was done, I think it was 40 pages for the first, for the first chapter.
So you brought that home. Your definition had to be exact. That's what you're saying in so many words, or in a lot of words.
You don't want to leave your reader with necessarily more questions than answers. So when and incidentally, a lot of these two books the research was done in my last program in biblical apologetics. Excuse me, but these two chapters, that turned out to be the first two chapters of Transformational Truth, Volume 1 and 2, was all kind of, if you will, freelance research. It was no course that I was doing this for. This was kind of an itch that I needed to scratch and dig out myself. So I have philosophy, biblical philosophy. What is biblical philosophy? And so I had to define the terms, the biblical basis for philosophy, biblical philosophy, knowledge, Old Testament, New Testament, truth, philosophy, education, Western thought. So, when I get done with this, I'm still thinking, well, it's almost 50 pages actually for that first chapter. But I'm also thinking, man, I'm just skimming the surface on this. And that's the way most of my books are. As much as I'm sourcing them, I'm just touching the hem of the garment. There's so much going on. And then the second chapter, which was really important, was a biblical worldview of evil, suffering, and miracles. So, if you think of it, an atheist wants to poke holes. The big one, like Richard Dawkins wants to, and Christopher Hitchens, of course, has passed away, but they like to poke holes in the. There's another guy named Frank. I'm trying to think of his Frank. What is his name now? he's professor at University of Arizona, but he's an atheist. He's one of the top atheists in the world. What he makes fun of making the universe out of nothing, and he's just mocking God. So, needless to say, if we can give credible biblical argumentation, for instance, the creation or the parting of the Red Sea or the rising of Lazarus or the resurrection of Jesus Christ, Dr. Gary Haberman has done an enormous amount of research on the person and death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, and that's a major sticking point for atheists. So he's a remarkable debater on a biblical apologetic for the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, the proofs of his death and his bodily his return to life, resurrection and his ascension, I suppose. But so he's very good at this, and of course miracles. Suffering too. That's a big one, and I've dealt with those in both. The problem of suffering in both of my books, and like I say, these topics you can write reams of books on these topics, but I'm digging as deep as I can. But I get done and I say, man, I don't know anything, which is
right.
Yeah. So those first two chapters were right at 99 pages. So.
Oh my goodness! I see. So when did you become a writer? Because I know you were in the Air Force years and years ago.
Well,
how did you get into that?
Well, here's the thing. When I started my seminary work in Connecticut, and I have to say it was the best education I got anywhere because it was local church based. They took a strong stand in the local church. And the Text Receptus, meaning the King James Bible, the underlying text, Masoretic and Text Receptus. So every sermon I ever heard at that church and every lecture I ever heard in the seminary there had something to do with the Text Receptus in the local church. And I did almost 2 years. I did about 60 credits of work there. And then now I didn't know how to write then. In fact, I really wasn't really a research writer until I did my doctoral program, because, you know, as trained preachers, most people up through the MDiv learn how to make how do I say this? They make declarative statements, but declarative statements are all well and good, but they're not research. And so when we got to Luther Rice and we were learning to write, we had to reverse our way of thinking. We had to say, well, what does this author and that author say? And then we give our commentary afterwards. So we had to flip it around. Instead of saying, I think this, I think this, I think this, you have to flip it around and say, what did this author say about the subject of miracles? And what did this author say about the resurrection of Jesus Christ? So you're going out and sourcing your other authors, and that's where you're really doing research. But prior to that, after I was actually, while I was still at Emmanuel, doing that master work, I started a second master's at West Coast Online and West Coast Baptist College in education, religious education, and we had a 10,000 word thesis to write for that master's degree. Well, they had to tell me to stop writing when I got to 19,000 words, and I was really having a great time. I think I had 50 sources. I think I needed 50. But the funny thing is, the cool thing is that when I need to start mapping out that paper, I pulled all the books off my shelves. I knew the categories I wanted to speak on, or when I was going through my library on the subject matter, I started developing my outline there and organizing the chapters, and it was a lot of fun to write. But again, I didn't know how to format. I wasn't really taught formatting too much, a tiny bit, but not anything like when I went to Luther Rice. We had a whole seminary course on writing and research, and a lot of places it's a standard course, and it certainly drove the entire rest of my coursework at Luther Rice.
So that education helped you tremendously. It sounds like at Luther Rice.
Oh, it did. It absolutely did. You couldn't publish anything I wrote previous to that. It would have had to be taken apart and rewritten, and I still may do some of that. I wrote my master's thesis at West Coast on the biblical marriage and family, and I got a lot of use out of it. I added, after that program, I added some seminar notes to it, and started teaching it in my Sunday school class at the church I was pastoring in Connecticut, and I taught it on a radio broadcast, and then we had a marriage seminar, and I just had two couples come to it, but we had a great time, and I told the Lord, if I wasn't pastoring, I'd want to do this because it was just a lot of fun.
It's much needed too. It's a great thing. It's a good thing for everybody.
Yeah. So at any rate, so then I really Luther Rice really taught me to be a researcher, writer, and I noticed that a lot of people that had graduated there became authors or professors. I noticed people that were professors there or had moved on to other things had become authors or were authors. So it started registering to me that this is this is definitely a school that is producing writers. So
Yeah, you said something earlier about an editor, and I'd like to just say or let everybody know, you're never good enough. You're never going to get past your editor. Always use an editor for your books or for your writings, because I hear it all the time, and it's real to me. I can't find all the mistakes or put everything together correctly. Somebody else has to look at it, because you get blind to what you're doing.
I almost recommend having two editors that independently edit your projects, and I possibly will start doing that at some point, just for that same reason. No one person doesn't have blind spots, if you will. You might look, so yeah, it's imperative. It's absolutely imperative for me to have an editor. I have a friend that did a EDD at Southern Seminary that edited all his whole doctoral thesis, and I'm like, this guy's a total geek. He's ridiculous. What's wrong with him? No, I'm kidding.
There's some amazing people out there. I had a really good editor and a proofer, which is just, they blew my mind. It was like, I didn't see this. I'm like you said, I was blind, or you just don't see everything. So it's very important that it's a team that puts the book together and the research.
Now
and everything.
the proofer is kind of like the first stage, and then it goes to the editor.
Yeah.
Is that how you?
Well, no, I did the editor first, and then the proofer was the formatter as well. So as a courtesy,
that's maybe kind of what I'm saying about the same thing. Is maybe it's the same idea as what you're saying. Maybe.
Yes, it is. Yes, the proofer actually is an editor, the last minute editor kind of thing, and then formatter, because I couldn't figure out the formatting. There's a lot of steps that I'll struggle with a little bit, and I'm learning on that. And as far as getting books together,
use Trabian. Who do you use for formatting?
For my book, I used some really good person, lady out of Chicago. She did an excellent job on that, and I understand it now.
Kate Trabian.
What's that?
Kate Trabian.
No, it was somebody else. I can't remember her name right now, but
somebody that's living.
Yes, I think the last time I checked. But yeah, it's very. I understand it. Those are critical steps, and so you as an author, you have a lot of that. You've been through that so many times. You've been through the process. I've only done it once. And so I remember what I did, and that's the direction I'm going in the future. But I like to see what you're doing. Every book I get, I look at the cover, I look at the inside and everything, because it means something different now. And I'm sure you see that too.
I do the same thing. Yeah, every book I buy, I devour everything I can find out about the author, and so it's good, especially on Amazon. You can. Now a couple books that I'm about to read. This guy here, John Lennox.
Okay.
He's a hoot. He's a mathematician from Oxford, and he destroys Richard Dawkins and anyone that he puts up against. He destroys them. He'll say to Richard Dawkins, he says, I was really troubled by the main thesis of your book, that you believe that God was a created being. He says, none of the Abrahamic religions believe that. So your God really is delusional.
That's a beautiful. What was his name again?
His name is John Lennox, Dr. Lennox.
John Lennox. I can remember that. I'll write that down.
And then I'm about to start this one here, The History of Apologetics, and that's just a monster. It goes right from the first century, and it's a great work. But you can tell just from how brief every segment of history is. There's a lot more could be written. It isn't a short read. It's 850 pages, but it's just the nature of research. So yeah, it's interesting. So that's really where my interest is, as well as church history. And I'm in June, Lord willing, I'm going with three or four guys that are PhDs, including the president of Truett McConnell University, we're taking an Anabaptist tour from Italy to Germany.
Oh wow,
Going
nice.
through 5 countries.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The Anabaptist tour. That sounds like a really interesting trek.
And I'll tell you why it's so important for the Christian, because truth is all, who was it? Somebody said truth is always truth. Truth is truth all the time. It's never not truth. But here's the thing: when you start studying epistemology, which is studying knowledge, but kind of the sidebar of that is the study of truth, and you have to ask yourself, where was truth in the Dark Ages for 1,000 years, sometimes called Satan's millennial? And I believe that truth was outside the Catholic Church. It wasn't in the Catholic Church. And I kind of raise a little cane here once in a while, because I go to one of the conferences, the Evangelical Theological Society, and I'll go into one of the breakout sessions, and they'll be teaching on church history, and they'll be gloating over the church fathers. And I'd stand up, I'd raise my hand and say, if the church fathers had it right, then we should all be Catholic. And everybody just goes, wah! just has a meltdown and wants to drag me out and stone me in the church parking lot.
You're right about that. That is true. And I agree. I was fascinated with the Holy Roman Empire. I took a course on that, and it was there's a lot of things in there that makes you wonder, how things came about. And that's how the nuns and the separation of the men and the women came from, for a different reason than what people think. And so that wasn't really biblical or anything, but you learn a lot going through history, and I'm sure you've done a lot of history research, because I know that's one of your things. So not as much
as I'd like to. The thing of it is I always say Emmanuel is my best education, but that block of education was unaccredited. So getting into a THM or PhD is rather difficult. I have found one that I can get into at Regent University at THM in church history. I'll have to take a couple semesters of Greek, which I wanted to take over again anyhow, but I have to take it for credit because the Greek I have was not accredited. So I have to take 2 semesters of Greek, and I'll be able to get into the THM at Regent, which is then it's only 24 credits. So with the Greek, it's 30. And then I think that should open a door for me to get into a PhD in church history. But we'll see. We'll see. And, there's a lot of other things going on, and
yes.
Lord willing, I'm gonna not only launch my Bible Institute on the PayPal, Valpak, Valpak advertising, but also on Newsmax TV.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
that's pretty big.
It is huge, and not only that is the ad rep told me. Sorry to get into finances on the air here, but the ad rep basically said, "Hey, if you buy overnight ads, which are very inexpensive, you'll hit prime time on the West Coast."
Oh, that's awesome. Excellent strategy. I have to talk to you about that later. It's offline here. That's pretty. You got great ideas, and you see things, and you're helping out a lot of people, I'm pretty sure, here. So I appreciate anything. Is there anything that you want to say, or anything you want to advertise, plug, or?
Well, only that I encourage people to go to and save my my website, andrewknight.org. I have it talks about speaking topics I can speak on there on apologetics, and my books are on there. All four of my books are on there: children's ministry, leadership the Lord's way, transformational truth 1 and 2, volume 1 and 2, which by the way combined is 750 pages. So they're all very practical, and they all have lessons after each chapter, lessons and answer sheets. So they'll, it's practical, and it's educational. So I would encourage people for that, and just your prayers. As you know, I'm recovering from my 24th surgery. I was in a fire 24 years ago. This is my 24th surgery, which was on my foot, my right foot. So I appreciate people praying for me. And
Yes,
I
sir.
told my doctor, no feet, no cows. So no, I didn't. I was actually a little bit spiritual with him one day. I've actually had a great witness to him, and I showed him from Romans. It says, "How precious are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace." And I wagged my finger in his face. I said, "You're not working for me. You're working for God, because you're getting my feet to work so I can go share the gospel."
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So I've had a great witness to this doctor, and that's, as much as you wonder why you go through suffering, guess what? I would have never been in this doctor's office had I not gone through this fire 24 years ago. And I hate what I've been through, but I'm witnessing to this doctor on a weekly basis. I shared with him Genesis 1:1. I said, "Who's the best scientist of the world, Doc? Who's the best scientist?" I showed Genesis 1:1 and 2. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. I mean, that's science.
Right.
That's the basis for, and incidentally, it's the basis for biblical apologetics. Everything begins within the beginning, God. Everything begins with God. Unbiblical or non-biblical or extra-biblical apologetics begins with other sources and tries to bring you to God. But
Right.
biblical apologetics begins with God and then comes back to man.
Totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. I appreciate you being here tonight, and I know you have other things you got to do. Appreciate having you on, Doctor. I've learned a lot, and like I said, I follow you. I see what you're doing, and I marvel at what you're doing right now, and all these other new things you're talking about. Very inspiring. As a young author with one book so far, only 17,500 words. So.
Oh, okay.
Will be, but I'm actually, my company, Browniefox Publishing, we're bringing on more authors. So we're starting out with children's books and getting into other things. And my father-in-law and my wife Carolyn's father, has his own. He's got really deep Bible books. Do you know what they are, Carolyn? Remember what they are? Okay.
One is 2 volumes of the whole book of the Bible.
2 volumes of the
whole Bible.
The whole Bible
with
hand-drawn maps. So I'll have to share that with you when it comes out.
Okay.
You guys are almost. You remind me of him being deep into apologetic and everything else. So.
Yeah. Oh, the apologetics are just so encouraging, and I guess I would ask people to pray. I really need to be out in churches and universities, secular universities, and giving talks. That's really what I have tried to make inroads to some Air Force bases and at Patrick Air Force Base, and I really didn't get anywhere with them. But I would just ask that you would just pray the Lord would open doors for me, because that's
yes.
really the need, and not just putting on a show. You got to draw the net. If
Mhm.
you go to, maybe, I'm talking about going to speak at a church up in Syracuse, New York, and if I do, I'll try and get into University of Syracuse or have some kind of outreach to it's a liberal university, and if I can, you gotta give the gospel, you gotta draw the net and give people opportunity to get saved.
That
That's
is
the
very
ultimate.
exactly. It's very inspiring. That I'm so happy to have you here. So you got the switch on all the time, and you're always looking for opportunities. That's the way we should be.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah.
your inspirational message and what you talked about. I'm just in awe of everything you said. So, well, I'll let you go, sir, and thank you very much for coming on. And
Okay.
you take care, and we'll be praying
Okay.
for you.
I sure appreciate it. Lord bless you.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Bye
Let's
now.
see. So I want to thank Ronald F. Owens for coming on tonight and Dr. Andrew Knight. They were awesome people, both of them in their own way. They're both educated. They've written multiple books, inspirational. That's what I have to say about them. So our next show will be on November 10th, and it will be about fighter pilots. I'm having 3 fighter pilots on from people that I know used to work with. They're all F-16 pilots, and they're going to explain, tell them what their life was like being a pilot, serving in combat. They're all veterans, and it'll be a fascinating show. So it's November 10th at 8 o'clock. It will air in honor of Veterans Day. Thank you, George. So thank you for being here, and don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let me read that right. I feel like Joe Biden. To the Let's Talk Facebook and YouTube page. And remember, this is Browniefox from the Dayton White House saying, if you have a story to tell, have time to listen, then let's talk. The other thing is, if you want to come on this program, contact me, contact Let's Talk. You got interesting subject. Like, we're going to have a lot of different things down the road. One of my dear friends, James Bostic, we're going to do an old time radio program. Anybody, if anybody's interested in joining that, if you're an old time radio buff, go right ahead. Yes. Remember, this is Browniefox from Dayton White House saying, if you have a story to tell, I have the time to listen. So let's talk. And thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop sharing here. And good night. And the broadcast. Woohoo. Friday.